Imam. Today on Spotlight Africa, Uganda's president urges people to vote in today's general election. Madagascar military receives equipment and training from Russia. Algeria's president urges youth living abroad illegally to come home. New calls for humanitarian truce in Sudan as peace talks resume in Cairo. In other news, at least 6 killed in fighting between rebel group and armed forces in Chad. These stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Stay with us. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. We begin Spotlight Africa from Uganda, where thousands of people attended President Yoweri Museveni's final campaign rally in the capital Kampala ahead of today's general election. The 81-year-old leader of the National Resistance Movement and NRM party, who has ruled the country since 1986, is seeking his 7th term in office. One of Africa's oldest heads of state, his government has changed the constitution twice to remove age and term limits to allow him to stand in the polls. But despite his age and growing concern about his government's suppression of political opponents, human rights abuses and corruption scandals, his supporters remain steadfast. Amid a sea of yellow, the ruling party's color, partisan Ima Akelo said she has been impressed by his youth programs, but that more money should be directed to the poorest. In a related development, Ugandan authorities have begun deploying troops to parts of Kampala, with armored trucks spreading into different parts of the city and soldiers patrolling the streets. Military spokesman Colonel Chris Magezi said that the deployment is meant to deter violence, rejecting concerns that the mobilization was anti-democratic. Meanwhile, the Uganda Communications Commission has directed mobile internet providers to temporarily suspend services less than 48 hours before the election, citing misinformation, electoral fraud, and incitement of violence. According to a letter to the internet companies, restoration of internet services will only be done after the Commission issues a notice to providers. The general election will be held on Thursday, January the 15th. Recall that President Yoweri Museveni is seeking a 7th term to extend his time in office into a 5th day. Meanwhile, polls have opened in Uganda's presidential and parliamentary elections, though voting has been disrupted by logistical delays in part of the country amid an internet shutdown. In the morning, there was growing frustration among voters queuing at some polling stations in the capital Kampala, where voting had yet to start. Election officials are yet to comment. The delays have been blamed on failures of biometric identification kits, which some have linked to the network outage, as well as a lack of equipment in some places. In the presidential race, Yoweri Museveni, 81, in power since 1986, is seeking a 7th successive victory as he faces a challenge from a charismatic pop star where voting has been taking place. There are reports that the biometric machines used to verify voters' identities are still malfunctioning in some areas. Away from that, as Madagascar continues its political transition after the ouster of previous government, it is strengthening cooperation with Russia. According to the Malagasy presidency on Wednesday, Moscow is supplying military equipment to the Indian Ocean nation and has sent a delegation to train armed forces in its use. The training will cover different types of equipment. Various military units based in the capital will take part. The presidency said it is willing to work with all countries, but said historically Madagascar has sourced its military equipment from Russia. In another development, Algeria's President Abdelmajid Tebboune has called on Algerian youth living abroad in vulnerable and illegal situations to come home. During cabinet meeting, the president said he would regularize the status of these young citizens, including those who have committed minor infractions in their host country. According to the government, in a statement, some of these young people were misled and exploited to act against their own country. The measure could affect tens of thousands of young Algerians who have left their homeland illegally in recent years. Some 54,000 Algerians immigrated to Europe between 2020 and 2024, according to the International Organization for Migration. Under Algerian law, leaving the country illegally is punishable by up to 6 months in prison and a fine. The presidential decree would allow these young persons to come home without facing legal proceedings if they pledge not to reoffend. We head now to Sudan, where peace efforts resumed in Cairo on Wednesday as Egypt, the United Nations and the United States called for the warring parties to agree to a nationwide humanitarian truce as the war between the army and its rival paramilitary nears the 3-year mark. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati told reporters that Egypt would not accept the collapse of Sudan or its institutions or any attempt to undermine its unity or divide its territory, describing such scenarios as red lines. Abdelati said during a joint news conference with Ramten Lamara, the United Nations Secretary General's personal envoy for Sudan, that Egypt would not stand idly and would not hesitate to take the necessary measures to help preserve Sudan's unity. Lamara said that the fifth such meeting demonstrated that diplomacy remains a viable path towards peace. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, and the military have been at war since April 2023. The conflict that has seen multiple atrocities and pushed Sudan into one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. In a rather sad development, clashes between the Chadian army and the MPRD rebel group have killed at least 6 people in the country's south. According to the army in a statement, the fighting erupted Tuesday morning in Kabul, in the Moyen-Kari region, leaving 3 soldiers dead and 10 wounded. MPRD leader Lokbeyem Bemha said the rebels had lost 3 martyrs and had 2 fighters wounded. Chad has been ruled for more than 3 decades by the same family, late President Idris Deby and now his son Mohammed, and is frequently rocked by rebel offensives which sometimes reach the capital, Jamana. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is placing an indefinite pause on immigrant visa processing from 75 countries, further restricting the legal routes for entering the United States. The State Department on Wednesday said the administration wants to bring an end to the abuse of the system by those who would extract wealth from the American people by using welfare and public benefits. President Donald Trump has sought to limit both illegal and legal crossing into the U.S. since returning to office, and his administration has already halted immigrant visa processing for people from Brazil, Iran, Russia, and Somalia. The order takes effect on the 21st of January, but a full list of the 75 countries has not yet been released. The department, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, will pause the visa processing while it reassesses its procedures to prevent the entry of foreign nationals who would take welfare and public benefits, Pigots added. According to the Associated Press, the State Department has instructed consular officers to hold immigrant visa applications from the affected countries, but the suspension will not apply to non-immigrant temporary tourist or business visas. In recent months, the State Department has increased restrictions on migration from countries Trump has deemed a threat to national security, including Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, and several countries in Africa. Morocco beats Nigeria 4-2 on penalties to face Senegal in the finals. Stay tuned for details of this and more after this time out. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. This is still Spotlight Africa, bringing you news all around the continent. Now, the United States has said that it had delivered critical military supplies to Nigeria after carrying out strikes on Christmas Day targeting militants in the country's unstable northwest. This delivery is the latest sign of strengthening security cooperation between Washington and Abuja and comes as Nigeria's National Security Advisor signed an agreement worth $750,000 per month with an American firm to lobby the administration of President Donald Trump. Recall that on the evening of December 25th, the United States struck sides in Sokoto State in what Nigeria described as a joint operation against targets linked to the Islamic State group. The December bombings marked a turnaround after relations collapsed late last year when Trump described violence in Nigeria as persecution and genocide against Christians. The Nigerian government and independent analysts reject the characterization, which has long been used by the American and European religious right. Still talking about Nigeria today, the Super Eagles on Wednesday lost 4-2 in a penalty shootout to host nation Morocco at the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations after a tense 0-0 draw at the Prince Moulay Abdellah Stadium. The semi-final was an evenly contested affair over 120 minutes, with Morocco dominating much of the attacking play, registering 16 shots to Nigeria's 2. Both sides created chances, but Nigeria's Stanley Nwabali and Morocco's Yassine Bono kept their teams in the game with key saves. Star forwards Victor Osimhen and Ademola Lookman struggled to influence the match, and their efforts in extra time were thwarted by the host's defense and goalkeeper. Nigeria's hopes were dashed when Samuel Chukwueze and Bruno Yemachi failed to convert, giving Morocco a 4-2 shootout victory. In Somalia, President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has announced that his government has cancelled all agreements with the United Arab Emirates, accusing the Gulf state of failing to respect Somalia's sovereignty and unity. In a televised address, Mohamud said the federal cabinet decided to terminate agreements covering economic infrastructure, security and defense. He stressed that while relations with the UAE had initially been based on good faith, Abu Dhabi did not engage Somalia as a single unified state. The president went further, accusing the UAE of bypassing the federal authorities and interfering in Somalia's internal affairs. The move comes amid heightened regional tension following Israel's recognition of Somaliland, the breakaway territory Somalia considers part of its sovereign land. The UAE has long invested in Somaliland's Berber port, and the development has intensified concerns in Mogadishu about foreign involvement in domestic affairs. The Sudanese authorities displayed hundreds of figurines, ornate vases and scarab-shaped amulets at a ceremony in Port Sudan. They were celebrating the recovery of 570 priceless ancient artifacts that were stolen from the National Museum in the capital Khartoum. It was looted and badly damaged after the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces seized the city in the early days of the ongoing civil war. Now under heavy security, the artifacts were recovered after months of investigation in collaboration with International Police Agency Interpol and UNESCO. Officials did not give any details as to how they were recovered. Artifacts in the museum told the story of the succession of great civilizations that inhabited the region over time. Now, little remains in the building, with looters leaving behind only the heaviest objects like the towering black granite statue of Pharaoh Takwar, who ruled the kingdom of Kush and Egypt from 690 to 664 BC. And that's all we have for you on Spotlight Africa, bringing you stories and events all around the continent. This has been put together by Spectrum Television. Do well to follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. We are MM. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good afternoon.